Hello, everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Pragmatics class. We are now in Module 3, Reference and Inference. I know a lot of you are probably thinking, why do I need to study how we point to things? We do it every day. But think about the image on this slide. We have two people, maybe a builder and a client, looking at a blueprint. The man is pointing and saying, "Fundament, a technical term." The woman is concerned about structural integrity. They're having a conversation about something abstract, a building, by using specific words and gestures. Their entire discussion hinges on whether the man's word, fundament, points the woman to the exact concept or part of the plan he has in mind. If she can't figure out his intended meaning, the project falls apart. In this module, we're going to dive into the game of clues that is human communication. We'll explore how we, as speakers, use language to point to things in the real world, that's reference, and how you, as a listener, make intelligent, lightning-fast guesses to understand exactly what we mean, that's inference. Understanding this game is crucial for anyone studying the power and precision of language. By the end of this module, you won't just know definitions, you'll master essential skills of pragmatic communication. Pragmatics, as you know, is about meaning in context, and that's what this is all about. We have 5 main goals. Let's look at them briefly. First, we'll define reference and inference and understand the fundamental concepts that drive successful communication. Second, we'll clearly differentiate expressions and reference, the difference between the words we use and what they actually point to. Third, we'll analyze the speaker's role in making successful references. It's a lot more strategic than you think. Fourth, we'll shift our focus to analyze listener inferences, understanding how you, as a listener, decode meaning from context. And finally, we'll identify referring expressions and recognize the different linguistic tools we use for reference, like pronouns and proper nouns. Let's start with reference. Simply put, reference is an act performed by a speaker when they use linguistic forms to enable a listener to identify something. The key takeaway here is that the speaker is the one doing the referring. It's an active, intentional process. Words, by themselves, don't refer, people use words as tools to refer. To make this clear, we use two terms, a referring expression, these are the words or phrases used to point to something. It's the linguistic tool. An example is, the man in the blue shirt. The referent, this is the actual person, object, or idea being referred to. In our example, the referent is the specific professor in the cafeteria. The entire process is the act of reference, the speaker's intentional choice of words to identify the referent. Look at this scenario in the cafeteria. Imagine you and your friend are here, and you want to point out your professor. You say, "The man in the blue shirt is my professor." The speaker's job is an act of strategy. You chose the man in the blue shirt because you believed it would help your listener identify the correct person immediately. Your choice considered two things, the listener's knowledge and the current context. If there were only one person wearing a blue shirt, that expression is perfect. It's concise and efficient. But what if there were two? You'd have to add more detail, right? Something like, the tall man in the blue shirt. This shows that context matters. Successful reference depends on a shared understanding between you and your listener. You, as the speaker, must assess what the listener can see and know in that specific situation. If reference is the speaker's move, then inference is the listener's move. Inference is the listener's mental process of connecting what is said to what is being referred to. It's a logical, deductive process. The listener takes the clues from the speaker's words and combines them with the context to reach a logical conclusion. Let's go back to the cafeteria example to see this process. Speaker's words, the man in the blue shirt is my professor. Listener's process, the listener actively looks around the cafeteria, combining the linguistic clue, man in the blue shirt, with the physical context. Successful inference, the listener successfully identifies the correct person as the professor. This process is constant, fast, and almost automatic in conversation. It's a core pragmatic inference that makes language processing quick and seamless. You don't realize you're doing this millions of times a day, but you are. This slide is here to hammer home one of the most fundamental concepts in pragmatics and in this module. Say it with me, words don't refer, people do. This is the common mistake we want to avoid, thinking the linguistic expression itself has a fixed meaning that never changes. It doesn't. The referring expression is just the instrument, the tool. As language studies students, you must recognize that meaning is an action. The speaker is the agent, the person doing the referring. This is why context is so incredibly important, as we'll see next. Here's a common situation. Read the sentence, "The new English teacher is here. He looks strict." Notice we have two different referring expressions. The new English teacher. He. But they both point to the same referent, one specific person, the new English teacher. The word he is only understandable because of the preceding expression, the new English teacher. The surrounding language, what we call context, provides the crucial clues for correct inference. This process of tracking a single referent throughout a conversation using different expressions is called co-reference. It's how we maintain a smooth, flowing conversation without being robotic and repetitive. This slide perfectly illustrates why words don't refer, but people and context determines meaning. The core idea is that the same referring expression can point to different reference, and the listener uses context to figure it out. Let's look at the two scenarios involving the name Maria. Scenario 1, famous singer. If you were just discussing a celebrity named Maria, and then you say, "Maria is coming over," your friend correctly infers you mean the singer. The context of the celebrity discussion locks in the referent. Scenario 2, family member. If you were talking about your family, and then you say, "My sister Maria is coming over," your classmate correctly infers you mean your sister. The word sister and the family context resolve any ambiguity. This ability of the listener to use contextual knowledge to resolve ambiguity is the hallmark of human pragmatic competence. It's what makes us such flexible communicators. Ultimately, communication is a team sport. Successful reference requires teamwork between the speaker and the listener. It's a collaborative process. Look at the cycle. The speaker chooses the appropriate referring expression based on their assessment of the listener's knowledge. The listener processes, using context and knowledge to make the necessary inferences. If everything works, understanding is achieved through the successful identification of the referent. The feedback loop is where confirmation or clarification happens if the listener needs it. This collaboration is founded on the assumption that speakers are being cooperative and rational in their communication. Let's focus on the speaker's half of the collaboration. The speaker's primary responsibility is to choose expressions that are clear and appropriate for the context. This choice is based on assessing what the listener knows. This brings us to a crucial concept, the principle of informativeness. Your goal is to provide just enough information for the listener to identify the referent. You must find a balance, not too little, not too much. Why is this important? Efficiency matters. Over-explaining can be as confusing as under-explaining. Good speakers are efficient and find the right balance through context assessment. For example, if you both just saw a movie, you can be vague, "That movie was exciting." The context handles the rest. If you haven't seen it together, you must be more specific, "The new Marvel movie was exciting." Now for the listener's part. The listener uses the speaker's expression and available context to infer the correct referent. We rely on three main forms of context. Linguistic context, this is what was said before. If I say, "I saw a cat. It was friendly," the listener understands that the pronoun "it" refers to the previously mentioned cat. Physical context, this is the immediate surroundings, the place, time, and visible objects. If you tell me, "Hand me that book," and point, the gesture, the physical context, helps me identify the correct item. General knowledge, this is our shared understanding about the world. If I say, the president is visiting the Philippines today, a local listener in the Philippines will automatically infer this refers to their own Philippine president, not the president of a random country. They use their cultural and general knowledge to make that inference. Speakers have a toolbox of linguistic tools for making references. The tool they choose depends on the communicative purpose and the context. There are 4 main types. Proper nouns, these are names of specific people, places, or things with fixed reference. Think Maria, or for us, Isabela State University. Definite noun phrases, these start with the. By using the speaker assumes the listener can already identify the referent. Examples are, the girl in the red dress or the cafeteria. Indefinite noun phrases, these start with a/an. They are used to introduce a new, unspecified referent to the listener. For instance, a student asked me, or a new restaurant. Pronouns, words like he, she, it, they. They refer to things that have been previously mentioned or are obvious from the physical context. For example, the professor is great. He teaches my class. Proper nouns are powerful tools for reference, as they have fixed reference. However, they require shared knowledge between the speaker and listener. Provide some examples of proper nouns, like, my sister Maria, Isabela State University, Starbucks, and John. Explain that once established, proper nouns become efficient referring expressions. But the speaker needs to ensure the listener knows who or what the name refers to. Sometimes additional context is needed, like, Maria, my sister from Manila, or John from our chemistry class. The key is that proper nouns assume the listener has the necessary background knowledge. The choice between the and, a or an is a great example of the speaker's strategy. It signals important information about what the speaker assumes the listener knows. Definite article, the. Using the signals that the speaker believes the referent is already known or easily identifiable by the listener. For example, the cafeteria is crowded today. You're assuming your listener knows exactly which cafeteria you're talking about. Indefinite article, a or an. Using a or an is a way to introduce a new referent that the listener hasn't heard about yet. For example, a delicious new restaurant just opened. You're not assuming they know which one, you're telling them about it for the first time. This distinction is vital because it directly tells the listener, should I already know this? Or, this is new information. Pronouns are powerful, but they are also perhaps the most challenging referring expression because they depend entirely on the listener making a successful inference. Let's trace the inference process for the sentence, the new professor is great. He teaches my class. Pronoun encountered, 01 The listener hears the pronoun he and must pause for a fraction of a second to determine the referent. Context search, 02 The listener's mind immediately looks back to the previous mentions, the context in the conversation. Inference made, 03 The listener concludes that he refers to the new professor. Understanding achieved, 04 The meaning is resolved, and the communication continues smoothly. Pronouns allow us to avoid awkward repetition and keep the conversation. Anaphora and cataphora are the two specific types of co-reference we see most often. Anaphora is the more common one. It literally means looking back. Anaphora occurs when a referring expression, usually a pronoun, points back to a previously mentioned referent. This is essential for creating cohesive sentences and avoiding that annoying repetition. Look at the example. First mention, 1 came to class early. Anaphoric reference, 2, he was excited to give his presentation. The pronoun he refers back to the referent, 1. If we didn't have anaphora, we would have to repeat 1 constantly, making our speech sound very unnatural. Anaphora is key for flow. Cataphora is the opposite of anaphora, it's looking forward. This is where a referring expression, like a pronoun, appears first and points forward to a referent that will be introduced later in the sentence or text. Example, he was very tired, so the old man sat down. Forward-pointing pronoun, the pronoun he comes first. This creates a little bit of anticipation because we don't know who he is yet. Referent revealed, the referent, the old man, is introduced later, clarifying who he refers to. Understanding complete, the listener connects the pronoun to its referent to complete the meaning. Cataphora is less common than anaphora, but you'll often see it used in storytelling to build suspense or to add emphasis. Let's put it all back together. Reference and inference work together as a collaborative system. For communication to be successful, both the speaker and the listener have defined roles they must fulfill. Speaker responsibilities: choose appropriate referring expressions based on the listener's knowledge and context. Listener responsibilities: use linguistic, physical, and general knowledge to make correct inferences. When these two roles are executed successfully, we achieve successful reference. The listener correctly identifies the intended referent, which leads to shared understanding. This teamwork is why human communication is so flexible and efficient, allowing us to convey complex ideas with simple linguistic tools. And that brings us to the end of Module 3. Congratulations! You now understand that every conversation involves sophisticated cognitive processes, where speakers are strategic, and listeners are actively constructing meaning. We've covered the basics of how reference and inference make communication possible, from the types of expressions we use, proper nouns, definite and indefinite phrases, and pronouns, to the types of reference like anaphora and cataphora. In our next module, we'll take these principles and apply them to even more complex communicative situations, examining other pragmatic phenomena that shape how we interact.